Hi, I'm Malika Bilal, and you're in the stream, now live on YouTube. The United Nations estimates that by 2025, 2/3 of the world's population will face water stress conditions. But for some people living in Cape Town, South Africa, the struggle for water is all they've ever known.
I am Jay Knight. I am a political and social activist and a former cabinet minister in Nelson Mandela's cabinet. I am in the AJ stream.
It's estimated that water scarcity impacts more than 40% of the world's population. You don't have to tell that to the people living in Cape Town. They know what the struggle for water is like. In fact, an extreme drought could force the city to run out of water completely. The crisis has already taken a toll on Cape Town's tourism and agricultural industries. It's also highlighting the gap between rich and poor. Joining us to discuss this in Cape Town, Xanthia Limburg, a city councillor and chairperson of the Water Resilience Advisory Committee. Chanel Johannes, an activist with the Water Crisis Coalition. Michael Hilu, another member of the Water Crisis Coalition and an organizer with the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa. And Kevin Winter, lead researcher with the Urban Water Management Research Group. Welcome everyone to the stream. Now, Xanthia, when we last visited this issue on the stream, it was in December. It looked like this. Is Cape Town facing a future without water? The local government was warning of an impending day zero, May 18th, by when the city was projected to be without water. Well, since then, that campaign seems to have been scrapped. Is day zero still a reality?
Well, there are many factors that influence day zero, and we have been able to achieve quite a significant amount of things that have influenced day zero moving out quite substantially. Firstly, our consumption has dramatically reduced over the last 6 weeks in itself. We've reduced our consumption by close to 100 million liters of water, and this has massively altered the day zero modeling, which estimated day zero to initially be in early April. One of the other factors that have dramatically shifted day zero out is the fact that the agriculture sector has now fully utilized their allocation for the hydrological season, and they are no longer drawing from the dams, which has declined the rate at which dam levels are dropping. And in addition to that, we received water from the Groenland Farmers Association, and that water supply has now reached dams within the city's municipal boundaries and have provided additional supply for about a 4-month period. All of these factors, including evaporation levels declining, have shifted day zero out to the point where we don't foresee that there will be a day zero scenario in this particular year.
Well, Michael, you've heard what it sounds like has gone right, and we don't see a day zero scenario this year. What do you make of that?
Well, I think the issue, what the official from the city of Cape Town is that the day zero sort of been saved by the water that has been provided by the Groenland Farm Association. It has not saved the jobs of the workers, and that has actually been retrenched in the very same farming, sector or agricultural sector, especially in the winery, which has actually celebrated, profit, but they have not made any loss in the period of the drought. But the workers have actually lost their jobs and they are unemployed. And they actually possibly will face eviction, as it happens most of the time.
Right. So, Kevin, taking that in mind, take a look here. This is what the government is putting out. A guide to 50 liters or less per day. This is what that looks like. 10 liters for laundry, for shower, 9 for flushes, 5 for house cleaning. You see cooking, you see drinking. It's all laid out there. We can see what the guidelines are looking like, but not too long ago, the government was asking people to cut down their usage to 87 liters per person. What's next? And is 50 liters enough? Is this going to get the job done so that we don't hit that day zero?
Well, 50 litres is really tough indeed. It's not easy for residents to operate at that level. And of course, the 50 litres is aimed at residents, and it doesn't really touch as seriously to other sectors in the economy. Many of them have tried to make different arrangements to manage their water, to bring down the cost of their water. But the water demand has been placed almost entirely, the burden of the water demand, and the answer at the moment that the city is suggesting is all about reducing water demand, and almost only around water demand at the moment reductions.
I pulled up a tweet here from Melissa. Melissa says, I used to wash my hair 3 times a week, now 1 time. I can't shower every day anymore. I wash my laundry even less. I cook differently to use less water. I think we need to change the sewer system to use seawater. That's just one example that she gave, but she's describing her everyday life. Chanel, you're joining us on the phone. What does your everyday life look like?
Oh, wow. So firstly, I am from the Cape Flats. And do you know what happened to me recently, about a week ago? Actually, it started last year when my late grandfather passed away. My granny received a massive bill, so of 18,000 rand for a pensioner to pay. And what happened was that bill was caused because of an underwater leak. So in the Cape Flats, it's basically a region where many displaced peoples are from colonial times, apartheid times, have been shifted. So like everyone knows, South Africa has a big gap between the rich and the poor, right? So the outskirts, being the Cape Flats and the townships, you find many socioeconomic issues. And one of the issues are, the massive pipe leaks. Mm. And what happened was my grandmother received this insensitive bill, on the, so being, how can I say, going through the trauma of the loss of a husband, and was expected to pay this bill, if not hefty fines. So what we find also is this increase of tariffs within the Cape Flats. We also find the situation in which this pipe system is still not working. So, for example, last week we had the same issue with the pipe system, and we had to switch off our water supply.
So, Xanthia, what Chanel seems to be describing there might be summed up in this comment we just got live via YouTube. Jakarko says, is this a natural phenomenon or a result of mismanagement? Is it true that scarce water has been directed to farming? So she's talking about, you heard Chanel earlier talking about leaks, massive water bills when the water wasn't actually being used. Xanthia, what do you make of criticisms like that?
Well, this drought is as a result of climate change. We've received 3 years of below average levels of rainfall. 2017 was the worst level of rainfall in recorded history. And this has obviously placed great amount of strain on dam capacity. But in respect to Chanel's point, the city of Cape Town actually has the lowest water loss rate in South Africa at 14%, which is on par with international standards. The average water loss rate in South Africa, amongst other municipalities, is around 36%. And the city has been able to reduce its water loss rate to this extent because of investment in infrastructure through maintenance and upgrading programs. And this is a program that we are committed to ensuring we roll out to further minimize water losses within our system. Because of our water demand management and water conservancy programs over the last decade and a half, we've been able to become the more efficient in our operations with the lowest water use per capita in Cape Town. And this is a record for South Africa as well. And this is what we aim to build on. But in respect to things such as leaks on private properties, if there's an underground leak on your property and you require assistance for paying the amount of water that's been lost, the city does have a rebate program where you can make application, particularly for more vulnerable groups and pensioners. This assistance is provided. We are also cognizant of how water tariffs are costed and charged, particularly for poorer households. So for poorer or indigent households, water is free of charge for the first 6,000 litres per month. And in this way, we ensure that we are pro-poor in how we cost or charge for this basic service.
Xanthia, you are not pro-poor. Please let us not lie to the international community. You are not pro-poor. This Day Zero has been designed and created for the privatization of water, right? This has been the reality of the Cape Flats and the townships for many years. You know, we have socioeconomic inequalities that is not being eradicated by a government who does not care about our constitutional rights. You know, we have leaks in our pipes. We have water management devices that you know about that are being illegally installed and forced upon the poor. These water management devices, I hope you can speak to that now and let everyone hear about what the plans are with these water management devices. They are only allowing 350 liters of water to our household, according to government, which has 3 people in it. However, the households in the Cape Flats and the townships have about 10 plus individuals. These water management devices do not even have 350 liters because some households only have access to 70 liters of water. Once the water stops, the water is completely day zero on a daily basis for people. These management devices are not even being SABS approved. We also have evidence of thousands of these devices being basically dumped.
I think what Chanel is...
Excuse me, it's being dumped. I'm not yet done speaking. It's being
so
dumped.
Michael, Chanel, finish up your sentence and let's bring Michael in. Go ahead, Chanel.
Thank you so much. So basically what's happening to the waste of the millions of rands being put out for these water management devices that's being installed and forced upon the poor. You know, once the water stops completely, it's basically making people prone to die from curable diseases. People are dying from curable diseases.
I think what
Michael, go ahead.
Just outline is correct. And this is what the workers actually get affected in the communities. But what is important also to note here that these water restrictions affect workers now in their communities, but also affect them in their workplaces, where actually employers are actually demanding that these workers must bring their own water. Actually, where would they get their own water out of the 50 liters that are being provided to them? Further to that, they're actually not even allowed to utilize toilet oftenly when it's necessary for them to do so. So workers are actually being affected by this what you call water crisis or water management crisis that has been created by the city, while actually having admitted that they have actually received lower rain, but they have not actually put up systems in place that will ensure that if drought then will come, then they will have actually other water resources.
So yes, you can, but I want to share with our audience what it is that we're talking about, because we're talking about these water management devices. People may have no idea what we're talking about. Take a look at this tweet first from Melissa. She says, poor people are more likely to have water management devices that restrict water supply. They're also more likely to have multiple households on one property, so you might find 10 people using 350 liters a day. And here is a look at what that device looks like. This is pulled up from the City of Cape Town's website. This device replaces a standard water meter, and it's programmed to provide a daily allocation of water for you to use on your own property, except, as some say, in the townships and outskirts of Cape Town, there may not be running water in people's homes. They go to stations outside of their homes to fill up their water. So Xanthia, I know you wanted to respond to the criticism. Go ahead.
So I think it's incredibly irresponsible to make statements to the effect that the city has created this water crisis and that the water crisis was created to privatize water. Firstly, the responsible for water provision is that of the National Department of Water and Sanitation. Municipalities such as Cape Town are only responsible for reticulating water and treating that water to drinking standards.
But you
this particular drought has
meant
that Cape Town, the municipality is
Chanel, let's hear Xanthia's answer, and then we'll get back to you. Go ahead, Xanthia.
I did listen very patiently when Chanel spoke, so I would request the same respect. So the City of Cape Town has gone above and beyond its constitutional mandate in responding to this drought. If this drought was some fabrication of the municipality of Cape Town, then we wouldn't have seen the national government declare a national disaster in respect to the drought. the National Department a couple of days ago declared a national disaster for the drought because there is a drought both in the Western Cape, the Eastern Cape, and Limpopo. And the city of Cape Town has implemented water restrictions in order to manage the existing water far better. We've been rolling out water demand management devices for the last decade and a half, and we're not the only municipality that has been installing water demand management devices. Durban has been doing exactly the same, particularly in response to their drought, which they encountered just over a year ago. And these water demand management devices are set in line with the current or existing water restriction levels. And if there are more occupants on a property, you're able to make application and the meters are adjusted.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying, Xanthi. I hear Chanel disagreeing, but I want to bring Kevin back in here with this tweet. We got this from Solar Energy for Schools. He writes, water leaks have been a problem ever since I could walk. Our infrastructure is old and outdated. We need to hold our municipalities and leaders to high standards, that standard being that we deserve better. What's your take on mismanagement versus the drought versus how this water management device system is working?
Yeah, well, I'm a scientist, and so I look at numbers and I'm looking for the evidence. And so when I hear the stories, and these are not the first time that I've heard stories about complaints of the water demand management devices, these restricted devices, and also, very importantly, the stories of what I think is a national tragedy in what is happening to workers in the surrounding farmland areas, where there is poor production going on there. But let's come back to the real factors here. And what I've been writing down as the conversation's been going is the questions that I need to be asking here around, so why are these water demand management systems failing? They are, all of them, from what I'm told, are approved by a South African Bureau of Standards. So they're not just any devices that get put in place there. And if there is failure, what level of failure are we talking about? And what kind of failure are they responsible for resulting in the malfunction of them? And so those are the first questions I would ask. I think everyone has to start recognizing that we do have to meter the water. And the slogan that I use often is, if you don't measure something, you can't manage it. And so for the city to be able to have no meters and no ability to measure the water is extremely serious. But I think when we come to what's fair and what becomes extremely difficult for these meters to operate in homes where there are more than 4 people, then there has to be a means by which that can be addressed. And so I think there's a lot of work around the fairness and the communication of the instrument itself. But I want to know the numbers.
Michael?
The issue that the city is not responding to is how are they going to, save jobs, save people going into poverty and into deep inequality based on the fact that they've actually created actually poor water management system in ensuring that, yes, there is drought, but in this drought that workers are not going to lose their jobs because there are other water sources where water could be actually received from, and ensure that workers do not lose their jobs and the workers are actually not placed into deep poverty. Because what we see now and witness here is that the problem that has been created by government, all government spheres, from the city of Cape Town, provincial government, including national, they are shifting their problems into the shoulders of the workers, and workers must now pay dearly for their men.
So, Michael, I want to share with our audience a look at what you're talking about, just to give this a little bit more context. I pulled up this headline on my screen here: Cape Town farmers laid off amid water crisis. And we're looking at some 30,000 seasonal farm workers who now have no jobs because of this crisis. I hear your criticisms there. And Xanthi, I want to give you a chance to respond. But first, I want you to have a listen to this video comment we got from someone from Johannesburg. This is Vishwas.
There are 3 climate injustices registering in these communities. The first, based on inherited inequality and apartheid geographies. The Day Zero campaign of the DA government has essentially squeezed these poorer communities. They carry the cost of this crisis. The second injustice is the failure of the state at all three levels. This is a climate crisis failed state, and these communities are bearing the brunt of it. And finally, the decisions made by Trump and other petro elites to continue extraction and use of fossil fuels has contributed to this crisis as well.
Xanthia?
So the particular drought has been incredibly severe for all of the users within the Western Cape supply system. The city of Cape Town is one of many users that draw from a collection of dams within the Western Cape supply system. At the beginning of the hydrological year, the National Department of Water and Sanitation imposed further restrictions targets on all users that draw from the Western Cape supply system. And so the city was given a 45% restrictions target by the National Department of Water and Sanitation, and agriculture received a 60% restrictions target, which meant that they needed to operate with 60% less water than the previous year. And this has had massive economic impacts for those farmers. Many of the farmers operate outside of the city of Cape Town's municipal boundaries, but the provincial government of the Western Cape have put in place support programs to assist these farmers during these difficult times. It has come on everybody.
Xanthia, is there even protection for the Philippi horticultural area? Is there protection? You're speaking about agriculture, so let us speak about the aquifers. Let us speak about the Philippi horticultural area that the city and the provincial government is giving go-aheads, or is not even wanting to protect the Philippi horticultural area, which is the recharge zone that has so much supplies of vegetables that's been sold and distributed. It is basically threatening this piece of land, which is thousands of hectares of land, with mining on it. It is also threatening with the building of residential areas. So why is the government not protecting agriculture if they're wanting to go ahead with mining forces on the land, with residential rezoning on the aquifers? Why is the aquifer not then being protected? If the city is saying they are protecting agriculture, why are you not protecting the Philippi horticultural area?
So I hear you talking about aquifers. I want to bring up this tweet we just got from Fortis Mine, who says, how does one manage a crowd of 20,000 thirsty people lining up at a collection point for water? How will the authorities police the collection of water from natural springs? And what happens when sanitation fails or diseases break out? So Kevin, he's raising all kinds of questions there, but the point about the natural springs, the aquifers, others have raised the point of desalination. Are any of these potential solutions that you find enticing?
Yeah, I think there is a program which is, I'm afraid, only starting to really get going within the city of Cape Town, and with support from national government to some extent. And this is a moment when cities actually take the lead. And to expect, national government follows. It doesn't really take the lead in circumstances like this, because national government doesn't operate fast enough and doesn't do things at the appropriate scale. This is the moment when we're starting to look to new governance systems, and the city's got to step up to the plate to actually take much more stronger lead here, and to withdraw itself from the idea that national government is the only one that supplies water. And water does come from a variety of sources, and ultimately, if we are into a city which becomes long-term, more drought-prone, then desalination is the only way we're going to be able to survive in this with the size of the city in the longer term.
As the Water Crisis Coalition, we completely reject desalination. Desalination is extremely expensive. It has detrimental impacts on both social and climate and the ecosystem. So, for example, if you're looking at desalination, you are extracting the salt out of the ocean. What about the toxins? What about the toxins? Desalination is extremely expensive.
Chanel, Johannes, I have to pause you there.
Yes.
I know that desalination is a whole other topic that we can go into. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Our thanks to Xanthia, Chanel, Michael, and Kevin for joining us with this conversation. And of course, it will continue online on Twitter, #AJStream. Until next time, take care.